Welcome to Beyond the Stars, where stories don't just cross galaxies, they reach deep into the heart. In a galaxy where truth is buried and power is passed down by blood instead of justice, one heir chooses not to kneel. You're about to embark on the journey of a princess who never wanted a throne, and a warden who dared to challenge history. A story of choice, love, and the fight for freedom against everything written into your DNA. Don't forget to subscribe to Beyond the Stars so you won't miss the next voyage through our universe of emotional, mind-bending sci-fi storytelling. Chapter 1, Ashes. Beneath Sarun. The sky over Sarun was the color of rusted steel. Red and gray swirled in a storm that never truly broke, forever hanging like a memory too bitter to forget. Elias Rain crouched in the shadow of a collapsed spire, fingers brushing ancient glyphs etched into the stone. The desert wind howled through the ruined skeleton, carrying the scent of scorched metal and dry sand. A relic fragment lay before him, its surface pulsing faintly as if it still remembered its purpose. Another fake, he muttered, slipping the shard into his satchel. His voice was a low growl, shaped by years of disuse. Once a warden of the Galactic Heritage Commission, Elias had been trained to protect relics like this, to keep forbidden knowledge buried beneath rock and time. But that was before the uprising, before betrayal. He straightened, his gaze sweeping the landscape of broken monuments. Sarun had been the cultural heart of the Galactic Union, until the truth of their genetic experiments ignited the fires of civil war. Now all that remained were husks and the whispers of machines buried deep beneath the sand. He turned toward the next excavation site, unaware that a storm far more dangerous than any desert wind was about to find him. The ambush came with no warning. A flash of energy fire lanced across the ruins, barely missing his shoulder. Elias dove behind cover, unslinging the pulse rifle he hadn't used in weeks. Three figures in black armor fanned out across the ridge. Mercs, by the look of them, or worse, enforcers from the House of Dominion. They were too well equipped to be raiders. Someone had sent them. He returned fire, aiming for knees and shoulders, never the kill. His shot struck two, dropping them with a hiss of plasma-burnt armor. The third ducked out of sight. Elias moved fast, up the rubble, across a beam, landing behind the last attacker with silent precision. But the woman they were chasing was faster. She burst from behind a pillar, cloak tattered, cheeks streaked with dust and blood. A plasma dagger lit her path, and in one fluid motion she took the last merc down with a strike to the helmet and a boot to the throat. Elias blinked, lowering his rifle. The woman spun toward him, eyes wide and alert, weapon poised. "Wait," he said, stepping back. "Not your enemy." She hesitated, panting, her chest rising with the weight of fear and fury. Then something flickered in her eyes. Recognition, or maybe desperation. "You're Elias Rain," she said, "the last warden." He scowled. "That name's buried, like everything else here." She stepped closer, pushing back her hood. Her features were striking, sharp and regal, but hardened by survival. And there, around her neck, hung a crystal-like device glowing faintly with a tricolor sigil, the mark of the triumvirate houses. "Name?" he asked, suspicion coloring his tone. "Soraya Valaris, heir to House Intellect. And I need your help." Elias's jaw clenched. House Intellect was one of the three ruling bloodlines that had emerged from the Union's collapse, each claiming part of Sarun's inheritance. And he'd sworn never to trust any of them again. "Why would I help you?" She pulled the device from her neck. "Because I carry the final access key to the archive, and because they're hunting me for trying to use it." Elias stared at the device, a breath catching in his throat. The archive? The ancient intelligence hidden beneath Sarun's crust, a vault of truths the houses would kill to bury forever. And if what she said was true, she wasn't just a fugitive. She was the spark. Night fell quickly in Sarun. The twin moons rose above the horizon, casting violet light over the ruins, as Elias led Soraya deeper into the catacombs beneath the old plaza. They moved in silence at first, down crumbling stairwells and past dead machines, relics of a forgotten golden age. But Soraya eventually broke it. "You don't believe me." "I believe your trouble," Elias said. "The kind that wears a crown and thinks rebellion's a game." "I didn't ask for a crown," she replied. "I was born with a target on my back. And now the only way to stay alive is to uncover what my ancestors did to this planet. Elias stopped at a sealed iron door. He placed a hand against its surface, where his warden glyph still shimmered faintly. The metal groaned, ancient gears turning. I swore an oath to keep that archive sealed, he said. But you broke that oath when they betrayed you, she answered, like they betrayed this world. He looked at her then, not the princess, not the diplomat, but the woman beneath the title. There was fear in her eyes, but also fire. Maybe she was different. The door opened, revealing a long corridor lit by flickering blue lights. At the far end, a crystalline terminal pulsed with unread messages from centuries past. Soraya stepped forward, clutching the device at her neck. It glowed in response, resonating with the archive's presence. Elias stayed at the threshold, watching. If she could unlock what lay beneath, everything could change. But so could the cost. Chapter 2. The Princess and the Pact. The tunnel walls glistened faintly in the low light, lined with ancient circuitry pulsing like veins of a long-dead beast. Soraya trailed behind Elias, her breath steady but mind racing. The deeper they went beneath Sarun's ruins, the louder the archive seemed to call to her, like a whisper echoing in her DNA. Elias moved like a ghost, silent, sure-footed, never looking back. She could tell he didn't trust her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Where are we going exactly, she asked, breaking the quiet. To a place only 2 living people have ever seen, he replied flatly. One of them betrayed me. Let's hope the second doesn't. Soraya winced, unsure whether it was meant as a warning or a test. They reached a chamber, half swallowed by collapsed ceiling beams. In the center stood a raised dais covered in glyphs, a cracked stone console, and what looked like a dormant AI node, half fused into the wall, half encased in crystal. Elias brushed the dust from a control panel and gestured. If your story's true, this should respond to you. Soraya stepped forward slowly. She pulled the tri-marked pendant from her neck and held it toward the interface. A deep hum filled the room. The archive stirred. Lines of light spidered outward from the panel, climbing the walls, illuminating ancient scripts in gold and indigo. The node flickered. Then a voice, cold, metallic, genderless, spoke. Access protocol confirmed. Genetic sequence. Valaris Soraya, initiating subsystem awakening. Soraya exhaled sharply. It worked. Elias crossed his arms. What exactly are you trying to do with the archive? She turned toward him. Expose the truth. The triumvirate houses weren't formed to keep peace. They were created to cover up the sins of the old union. Elias raised an eyebrow. You think the public doesn't already suspect that? Suspicions aren't proof, but this, she gestured to the glowing node, this holds everything. Experiment logs, civilian test subjects, genetic templates, even the names of the families that authorized it. Elias's gaze darkened. That kind of knowledge starts wars. Soraya didn't flinch. It already did. The rebellion, the fallout, everything that happened to Sarun, it was the price of silence. I want justice. Elias stared at her for a moment. He'd heard speeches like this before from idealists, rebels, manipulators. But Soraya, there was something raw in her voice, not ambition, not glory, just conviction. Why now, he asked. Why come here with a key that could destroy the houses you're supposed to inherit? Her voice lowered. Because I'm not supposed to inherit them. I'm supposed to marry into all 3. Elias blinked. Come again? The Unity Accord, she explained. A political marriage binding the heirs of intellect, discipline, and dominion. If I agree, there'll be no war. But if I refuse, they'll start one anyway. She nodded. Unless I can break the cycle, expose the truth, dismantle the old power structures, and force a new beginning. Elias paced the room. And what do you need from me? You know how to navigate the archive, she said simply. Its inner vaults, security layers, encryption nodes. I don't. I need a warden. He hesitated. It would mean breaking every oath he ever swore. Again. He looked at her, not as a Valaris, not as a political pawn, but as someone risking everything on a choice most people would run from. And deep down, it stirred something in him. If I help you unlock it, he said slowly, there's no turning back. Once that data's out, the houses will do more than hunt us. They'll erase us. I know, she said. He studied her, then nodded. Then let's start with unlocking the first firewall. We'll see if your blood opens more than doors. Over the next few hours, Elias guided her through the activation process. The archive responded with cautious awakening, unlocking segments of visual records and corrupted memory chains. Partial files, voice logs, fractured images. They saw grainy footage of underground labs, children with glowing eyes in containment pods, scientists arguing over ethics while generals barked for results. Soraya trembled. This, this is where my bloodline came from? Likely, Elias muttered. The original Valeris prototype was engineered as a hybrid interface, meant to bridge all three houses, a political failsafe. Like a living key, she whispered. He nodded grimly. And you're the final version. She staggered back, almost tripping over a conduit. So all this, everything I am, was planned? Not everything, Elias said quietly. You chose to come here. That wasn't written in any genetic code. She met his eyes. Then help me write something new. He looked down at the interface. A second layer of data had become accessible. Names, bloodlines, financial logs, military contracts linking the triumvirate with the deadliest experiments. The deeper we go, he said, the harder it'll be to crawl back out. Soraya stepped beside him. Then we go all the way. Above ground, hidden eyes watched. From a ridge beyond the ruins, a scout lowered her scope and activated a comlink. Target located. Warden Rain is alive. The girl has activated the archive. A pause, then a cold voice replied, Send word to all three houses. If they open the vault, the past won't just haunt us. It'll kill us. Chapter 3, Gate of Forgotten Sins. The vault door hissed open with a sound like a dying breath. A gust of pressurized air, untouched for centuries, blew across Elias's face as he stepped into the core. The archive's inner sanctum lay ahead, circular, cathedral-like, with crystalline conduits branching from a central AI obelisk, like a neural network frozen in glass. The air shimmered with ghost light from data strands hanging in midair, spinning in fractal spirals. Every step echoed like a memory. Soraya paused at the threshold, awestruck. This is where it all lives? No, Elias said. This is where it was buried. He approached the obelisk, palms open, voice low. Warden Elias Rain, designation Omega Lock. The archive pulsed with sudden energy. Warden code recognized. Archive awakening sequence at 42%. The voice was different this time. Less machine, more human. Like something learning how to speak again. Can it hear us? Soraya asked. It remembers us, Elias replied. He tapped a command glyph on the obelisk. A ring of consoles blinked to life. Fragmented data nodes hovered above them. Most encrypted, a few partially decoded. Begin with subject lineage, Soraya said. Elias hesitated. Are you sure? She gave him a tight nod. Let's find out who I really am. He selected the file. A burst of holographic windows filled the chamber. Strings of DNA, lists of code names, Project Thales, Helix Protocol, Eden 9, spun around a central chart showing crossbred genomes from all three houses. Soraya's name pulsed at the center, surrounded by bloodlines artificially entwined over generations. Your ancestry was manufactured, Elias muttered. Your mother's side had dominion enhancements, command instincts. Your father's line came from intellect, cognitive upgrades. Discipline was grafted later, combat reflexes, emotional dampening. Soraya's face went pale. So I wasn't born to unite the houses. I was built to do it. And bred to obey, Elias added grimly. Look. He tapped another node. A video appeared, grainy security footage of a laboratory room. A young girl, no older than 8, stood in a white chamber, tearing through glass at another version of herself. Slightly different, slightly wrong. One was marked Soraya Valeris 5.2, the other Soraya Valeris 5.3. In the footage, scientists observed, notes were logged, one girl cried, the other remained silent. Then the screen cut to black. Soraya turned away, breathing hard. They culled the others, she whispered. I was just the model that survived. Elias said nothing. He had seen horrors like this before. Genetic trials masked as diplomacy, lives reduced to schematics. But this one felt personal because she was standing beside him. still breathing, still fighting. I'm sorry, Tito, he said quietly. Soraya steadied herself. Don't be. I'd rather know the truth than live a lie. She turned back to the console. What else is in here? Elias accessed a secondary feed, the Political Sealing Act, a treaty dated back over a century signed by founders of the Triumvirate. It contained terms of silence, distribution of wealth, suppression of certain data streams, and a direct reference to the archive lock. This wasn't just cover-up, Elias said. This was deliberate. They built the houses, owned the secret. It's the foundation. Soraya clenched her fists. Then when I expose it, the foundation crumbles. Not without resistance, Elias warned. If they know you're in here, they'll come for you. They already did, she said. Remember the ambush? Suddenly the archive dimmed. The data spiral shivered. Elias looked up. Something's wrong. The voice of the archive returned, glitching. Unauthorized presence detected, firewall breach, initiating defensive lock. From the shadows near the perimeter, glowing red eyes blinked open. 3 Sentinel drones, long dormant, activated. They hovered with lethal silence, scanning for intruders. Elias cursed under his breath. Oriol, the archive's defense protocols. They're interpreting us as invaders. I thought you had clearance, Soraya shouted. I did, until it registered you as a wild card. The drone's limbs shifted, laser arrays arming. Elias pulled Soraya behind a fallen console. Stay down, the first drone fired. Plasma lanced through the air, shearing through a crystal pillar. Elias returned fire, his pulse rifle barely strong enough to stall the drone's shields. One shot clipped a drone, spinning it off course. Cover me, he barked. He sprinted toward a control panel on the far wall, diving between fragmented data nodes. As Soraya drew the archive's energy toward her pendant, the central obelisk glowed again. A surge of light burst outward, disabling 2 drones. The third staggered, then reoriented toward Soraya. Elias didn't hesitate. He fired 3 shots in rapid succession, striking its sensor core. The drone collapsed, twitching. Silence returned. They stood there panting in the flickering half-light, the archive slowly stabilizing. Soraya looked at him. You could have run. I don't run from the truth, he said, breathless. She smiled, just barely. Then let's find more of it. High above the ruins, a stealth cruiser drifted into position. Inside, a figure in ceremonial robes leaned over a projection of the vault interior. Her eyes were cold, calculating. Confirmed biometric activity, she said. Confirmed, replied her aide. Valeris Air and Subject Omega are both alive. They've reached the core. Contact the other houses. It's time to invoke the binding protocol. The aide hesitated. All 3 heirs will resist. Then offer them no choice. Chapter 4. Truth. Written in flesh, the archive's chamber was eerily quiet after the skirmish. The Sentinel drones lay shattered on the floor, their pieces still twitching with dying sparks. Soraya stood motionless beside the central obelisk, its glow now a calm silver hue. But inside, her thoughts screamed. Elias was tapping into another data vault across the room, but she barely heard him. Her eyes were locked on the last projected image still floating in front of her. A full genetic report. Her name, her ancestry, her design. Designation, Valeris Prime. Functional purpose, genetic fusion node of House's intellect, dominion, and discipline. Status, viable, high compliance index, recommend integration via ceremonial binding. Her knees buckled. She fell into a crouch, staring at the swirling DNA sequences. This wasn't just a secret, this was a blueprint. She wasn't born to rule, she was engineered to pacify. Every lesson she'd learned growing up, every speech about duty, unity, and legacy, it had all been code, programming, a controlled destiny. Elias, she said quietly, I think I'm a lie. He didn't turn. You're alive. That makes you real enough. She shook her head. No, you don't understand. They didn't just breed me for diplomacy. They altered my emotional regulators, my neurochemistry, my loyalty reflexes. I wasn't just trained to unite the houses. I was built to never question it. Elias looked at her now, his expression unreadable. I've seen 100 records like yours, he said. Most ended in madness or death. You're the first to look at the truth and still want to do something about it. Soraya let out a dry laugh. Do something? I was supposed to be the perfect heir, the peace child. All I had to do was smile, sign the unity accord, and let the houses plug me into the throne like a biochip. But you didn't, Elias said. You came here instead. She stood slowly, brushing dust off her cloak. Her fingers tightened around the pendant at her neck, now glowing slightly from the archive synchronization. They'll never let this truth reach the people, she said. If I go public, they'll brand me as defective, or worse, unstable. Elias gave her a grim smile. That's why they'll try to kill you first. A sharp chime interrupted them. Elias turned to a terminal. A live transmission was attempting to override the archive's firewall, a high-level request tagged with the sigils of all three houses. Someone's trying to remote in, he said. Encrypted voice feed only. Want to take it? Soraya nodded. The projection screen flickered, and a grainy audio-only feed crackled to life. A voice, elegant and controlled, filled the room. Princess Valaris. This is Lady Soraya of House Intellect, speaking with full authority of the Triumvirate Accord. Soraya stiffened. Lady Soraya, I didn't expect you to contact me directly. We know where you are, we also know what you've accessed. The voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Your survival is still an option, but only if you comply. Return to orbit. Enter custody. The Unity Accord will proceed as scheduled. This phase of rebellion will be forgiven. Soraya stepped forward. Forgiven? Her voice was razor sharp. You used my body, my mind, my existence as a diplomatic leash, and now you expect me to submit? A pause. You are a product of legacy, Soraya. Legacy must be preserved. Without the Accord, war will reignite. Billions will die. Is your identity worth that? Elias leaned closer and muttered, They're playing the peacekeeper card. Classic deflection. Soraya ignored him. Here's my counteroffer, she said. Dismantle the houses. Release the archive's data to the people. Let them decide what legacy is worth keeping. Static crackled through the line. Then, you are malfunctioning. Return now or be retrieved by force. The transmission cut. A heavy silence followed. Elias crossed his arms. Well, that went well. Soraya turned back to the obelisk. They won't stop. Neither should we. He keyed a new command. A secondary layer of archive files unlocked, revealing audio logs, visual reconstructions, even empathy-mapped holograms, recreations of how early genetic test subjects felt, based on neural scans. One by one, images appeared of families torn apart, children tested without consent, entire communities sterilized under Project Dominion's protocols. Even House Discipline had records of compliance conditioning used on battlefield orphans. Soraya couldn't look away. This was never about peace, she whispered. It was about control. Elias didn't speak. He didn't need to. His eyes burned with the same rage. She turned to him. If we leak this now, it'll start riots across a dozen colonies. He nodded. But it might also end the triumvirate. A beat of silence. Then we do it, she said, but not just as fugitives. He raised an eyebrow. She took a deep breath. We gather proof, reach the public, force a tribunal, and if they try to shut us down, then we tear the throne from under them. Far above Sairune, in orbit, 3 command ships floated in formation. 1 gold, 1 silver, 1 crimson, each representing a house. Inside, their heirs, women raised on doctrine, loyalty, and ambition, received the same encrypted briefing. Subject Valaris has gone rogue. The archive is compromised. Proceed with activation of binding protocol. One heir hesitated, fingers lingering over the screen. She was one of us, she whispered. Another heir narrowed her eyes. No, she was made for us. And now she's breaking the mold. Their screens synchronized. Target confirmed. Primary objective, terminate Warden. Recover the heir. Alive if possible. Obedient if not. Chapter 5, The Law of Blood and Thrones. The sun over Sairune hung low and blood orange, casting long shadows through the fractured ruins of the ancient Capitol Dome. For the first time in decades, emissaries from all 3 triumvirate houses had descended upon the same ground. Not to negotiate, not to sign treaties, but to reclaim a runaway heir and a rogue warden. Soraya stood at the center of the broken plaza, Elias at her side, the archive's pendant now glowing steadily on her chest. They had broadcast a controlled data leak across secure channels the night before, just enough to force the house's hand, enough to summon their chosen daughters. And now they arrived. The first to emerge was Commander Thelina Veer of House Discipline. She moved like a blade in human form, tall, angular, dressed in obsidian armor, etched with martial scripture. Her eyes scanned the plaza like a battlefield. She offered no greeting, only a curt nod. Next came Alira Kess, heir of House Intellect. She wore layered robes of silver blue and walked with the grace of one born to calculation. Her face held no emotion, only curiosity sharpened into weaponry. And last, wrapped in crimson silk and gold lattice, came Diane Rael, the daughter of House Dominion. She smiled, but it was the smile of someone who had already decided how this ended. They formed a triangle around Soraya, like judges at a sentencing. Elias kept a hand near his weapon. "Are we sure this isn't a trap?" "Of course it's a trap," Soraya said quietly, "but it's also tradition." She stepped forward. "By the Articles of Inheritance, we three were raised to rule, but only one of us was designed to bind the others together." Alira's voice was cold. "You mean you?" Diane folded her arms. "You were always the favorite, the perfect solution." Soraya took a breath. "I was a creation, not a choice. I didn't come here to take your place. I came to offer you truth." She tapped on her pendant. A brief projection emerged. Flashes of archive files, gene maps, lists of the disappeared. The data shimmered in the air between them like a phantom too dangerous to touch. Thelina frowned. "These could destabilize everything." "Or save it," Soraya replied, "if we acknowledge what was done and choose something better." Diane stepped closer. "And what exactly do you suggest? That we dismantle our houses? Tear down the only system keeping the colonies from civil war?" "No," Soraya said, "but I won't be your puppet. And by law, the one who activates the archive, me, must choose." Alira raised an eyebrow. "Choose what?" Elias stepped forward. "It's in the old planetary charter," he said, "of the activation pact. If the archive awakens and the throne is contested, the activator must marry the heirs of all three houses to ensure a blood-bound unity. It was meant to prevent war." Thelina's eyes narrowed. "An ancient safeguard twisted into marriage." Diane smirked. "So this is your big move, Soraya? Wed us all and sit on a throne of guilt?" "No," Soraya said firmly. "I'm invoking the clause, but I won't follow its path." The plaza grew still. "I reject the marriage. I reject the throne. I reject the entire premise that peace requires obedience." Elias blinked. "Soraya." She turned to him, her voice unwavering. "I don't want to unite the houses by blood. I want to break the belief that blood should rule it all." For a moment, none of the other heirs spoke. Then Thelina stepped forward. "And what's your plan instead? Anarchy? Elections?" "Representation," Soraya said. "A new council, equal voices from every colony. Not chosen by heritage, chosen by merit." Diane scoffed. "You think the people will follow that? You think they want change?" "They already do," Elias said. "We leaked enough to spark rebellion on 6 border worlds. They want justice, and they want someone brave enough to start it." Alira considered this, gaze flicking between Soraya and the projection. Finally, she said, "You know what they'll do if you defy the clause." "I do." "Then why not accept it?" Diane pressed. "You could have all of us. Power. Protection. You wouldn't have to fight." Soraya's voice cracked slightly, but her words were resolute. "Because I want to be free, and I want you to be free too, not prisoners of roles we didn't ask for." Silence. Then unexpectedly, Thelina stepped back and unsheathed her ceremonial blade, then drove it into the stone, a symbol of peace. "I never wanted the throne," she said, "only honor. If this is the honorable path, I'll walk it." Alira tilted her head. "I want access to the archive. Full transparency. If we're building something new, I intend to oversee it." She extended her hand. Soraya took it. Only Diane remained unmoved. Her smile had faded, replaced with icy calculation. "You're dismantling centuries of rule," she whispered. "Do you really think the houses will let you walk away from that?" I'm not walking away, Soraya said. I'm walking through. As the sun dipped behind Cyrun's jagged peaks, the old laws fractured. One word, one vow, one choice at a time. In the shadows beyond the plaza, cloaked figures from the houses watched. Some were loyalists, others uncertain. But none of them moved. Not yet. Elias stepped beside Soraya as the other heirs began to speak among themselves. You just told the three most dangerous women in the galaxy that you're not marrying them. She smirked faintly. Disappointed? He grinned, relieved. Their laughter, brief, human, unarmored, cut through centuries of silence like sunlight in ruins. The archive had gone quiet again. Not silent, never silent, but still, like it was watching. Deep below the ruins of Cyrune, Soraya stood before a circular console as Elias adjusted the broadcast calibrators. On the screen above them, flickers of rebellion crackled from the edge of every sector. Civil protests on Karen Prime, digital uprisings in the tech arcologies of Nerva 4, worker strikes on the terraformed moons of Adranus. Each wave was a reaction to the data leak, a mere taste of what the archive had unveiled. And it was enough. Signal's strong, Elias muttered. If we upload everything now, names, files, visual logs, it'll spread across the outer colonies in under an hour. And once it's out, it's permanent. Soraya stared at her reflection in the console. She looked like a stranger to herself, part air, part rebel, part artifact. No going back, she said quietly. Elias looked at her. Did you ever think about it? Accepting the marriage, living that life. She hesitated. I did. For a long time, I thought it was the only path. That maybe if I did what they asked, people would be safe. And now? Now I know that peace built on lies isn't peace. It's just delay. A tremor shook the chamber. Elias's fingers froze over the panel. That wasn't seismic. That was ordnance. An alarm flared red across the archive's ceiling. Warning, perimeter breach. Hostile forces inbound. Estimated entry, 3 minutes. Soraya's heart dropped. They're coming for the core. 3 forces, Elias asked. Not the heirs, Soraya said. The houses. The old guard. They're trying to bury the archive for good. Elias grabbed his weapon. You finish the upload. I'll slow them down. She turned to him sharply. You won't last. I don't need to. I just need 5 minutes. He started toward the outer chamber, but Soraya caught his arm. I won't lose you, she said. There was something in her eyes, raw, aching, not political, not strategic, just her. Elias hesitated, then said quietly, Then give me a reason to live through it. She stepped closer, heart pounding. You already have. And for the first time they kissed, not like fugitives, not like soldiers, but like 2 people who had nothing left to prove except that they mattered to each other. The moment ended too quickly. I'll hold them, Elias said, voice steady. Just hit that button. Outside the archive's ancient gate, the storm of war arrived. Black armored shock units from House Dominion dropped first, heavily armed, tactically precise. Moments later, kinetic tank pods from House Discipline rumbled over the plateau, flanked by silent gliders from House Intellect, their cloaked drones mapping every inch of the terrain. But Elias was already waiting. He'd activated dormant defense arrays hidden beneath the stone, turrets, pulse mines, and ancient plasma lances left behind by a forgotten empire. As the first wave advanced, a cascade of fire lit the sky. Explosions carved through the dust. Elias moved like fury incarnate, leveraging every trick he'd learned as a warden. He wasn't trying to win, he was stalling time. Inside, Soraya initiated the full archive broadcast. The holograms flickered through every node, spinning stories of forbidden experiments, suppression packs, engineered heirs. She keyed in each data stream, syncing it to the orbital relays above Cyrune. Almost there, she whispered, as sparks flew across the console. Suddenly, crack! A support beam crashed behind her. The enemy was breaching the walls. She hit the final command, full archive release, confirmed. Uploading to Interstellar CivilNet. The light surged. The chamber glowed like a dying star, and then went dark. Outside, the attacking forces froze. Alerts flared through their comms, data leak confirmed, triumvirate secrets exposed, civil unrest detected, orders conflicting, Mission status, compromised. Some turned to retreat. Others, without command, fired blindly. Elias ducked behind cover as mortar fire exploded nearby. He rolled, took out a second trooper, but shrapnel sliced through his side. He winced but kept moving. Then, shouts. Not Dominion dialect, not discipline, different. He looked up. Thelona, Alira, and Diane had arrived, not as enemies, but flanked by their own personal guards, not to fight but to stop the slaughter. They'd chosen. Within the hour, the fighting ceased. A temporary ceasefire was declared. The heirs, once bound by a lie, now stood side by side on the broken plaza, declaring formation of a provisional council open to citizen representation. The triumvirate, as it had existed, was dissolved in name, its foundations shattered. And in the center, bleeding but alive, Elias watched Soraya deliver her first public address. Today, we have broken something sacred, she said, her voice echoing across the network feed. Not out of hatred, but out of truth. The archive revealed what we feared, that our systems were never designed to serve the people. They were designed to control them, but no more. I was born as a symbol of unity, a living treaty, but I will not be anyone's symbol. I choose to be a citizen. I choose to be free. After the speech, Elias leaned against a broken pillar as Medtex tried to dress his wounds. Soraya approached, brushing hair from her eyes. You survived. Couldn't let you steal all the spotlight. She sat beside him, letting silence stretch for a few seconds before whispering, I wasn't sure you'd make it. He smiled. I told you. You gave me a reason. She reached for his hand. For the first time, they weren't fugitives, or rebels, or constructs. They were just together. And the stars above Sayarune no longer looked like scars. They looked like beginnings. Chapter 7. The Fire Beneath the Throne. The air inside the Dominion Citadel was chilled by control. Every corridor, every wall hummed with silent surveillance. Light was sterile, colors neutral, designed not to inspire, but to discipline. Elias moved through its shadows like a ghost, one hand pressing against the side wound he hadn't allowed to fully heal. Soraya had been taken after the ceasefire, not as a prisoner, but as a protected heir. Translation: isolated, watched, and pressured. The houses hadn't forgotten centuries of control overnight. They were giving her a choice: resume her role as the symbolic bride of the triumvirate, or risk seeing the fragile new peace collapse under the weight of old loyalties. Elias had seen enough choices like that to know what they really were. And that's why he'd come. Not for war, not for revenge, but for her. He bypassed 2 corridors with silent pulse disruptors. Dominion guards were thorough, but they hadn't faced a warden trained in archive-era infiltration. As he rounded the final hallway, a familiar voice cut through the calm static. You really think this is wise? Elias pressed closer to the vent. The voice was Diane. Inside the chamber, the 3 heirs stood across from Soraya, who sat calmly at a long obsidian table. Her wrists weren't bound. But the pressure in the room was a prison on its own. Thelena spoke next. The people are still unstable. If we fracture again, they'll tear each other apart. And unity under truth is still unity, Soraya replied. Unless what you want is obedience dressed in peace. Alira's tone was more neutral. You understand what your rebellion cost us? My house has lost 2 Risorto colonies. The governors are panicking. Because they fear freedom, Soraya said. Not because freedom failed. Diane slammed a hand down. You are throwing away every Mustang. All we built, all that held this galaxy together. Soraya stood. No, she said, voice level. I am building something, for the first time, something that doesn't begin in blood. Silence. Elias slipped through the upper vent and dropped silently into a side alcove. He watched, poised to intervene, but Soraya was holding her ground. I didn't come here to fight you, she said. I came to ask you something none of our mothers ever asked each other. She looked at each of them. What do you want? The question hung in the air like a suspended blade. Thelena was first to answer. I was raised to lead troops, she said. To believe honor was found only through command. But lately, I find more clarity in silence than in orders. She looked at Soraya. I don't want a throne. I want to protect the people who never had one. Soraya nodded, then Alira spoke. I thought understanding the world meant controlling it, but when the archive opened, I realized how much we've suppressed to keep our knowledge clean. She stepped forward. I want truth, even when it's ugly. Finally, Deanne, the one who had smiled longest, her expression cracked now, no longer certain. I don't know what I want, she admitted. For so long, I've been what others wanted. The perfect heir, the charming diplomat, the strategist. She turned to Soraya. But you broke the mold, and you're still standing. Her voice softened. Maybe I envy that. Elias finally stepped forward, drawing surprise from all four women. Then let her go, he said, not as an enemy, not as a martyr, but as proof that something new can stand where the old used to rule. The heirs looked at each other, and slowly, one by one, they stepped back from the table. Hours later, in the archive courtyard, now turned into a gathering place for civic delegates from across the colonies, Soraya stood at the center of a rising storm of voices. The first Galactic Reform Tribunal was underway, broadcast live, watched by billions. And instead of speeches, instead of declarations, the heirs of the triumvirate did something none of their ancestors had done in centuries. They listened. When it was over, and the stars of Sayarune shimmered again, without warships blocking their light, Elias found Soraya leaning against the archive gate. You didn't need saving after all, he said, smiling. No, she replied, nudging him, but I wanted you there. He nodded. They chose peace. They chose choice, Soraya said. It's a beginning. She turned to him, this time without the weight of destiny between them. I'm not a ruler. I'm not a weapon. I'm not a bride of power. You're Soraya, Elias said simply, and that's enough. Their hands met. Above them the archive glowed, not as a threat, not as a secret, but as a beacon. And for the first time in centuries, Saruni belonged to its people. Chapter 8. The voice that broke the silence. They said no voice could pierce the veil of galactic politics, until one did. The archive's signal tower rose like a jagged tooth from the ancient heart of Sirun. Repaired and reactivated, its quantum transmitter now pulsed with the final upload, a stream of decrypted history, genetic war crimes, and sealed accords no longer hidden. Standing beneath it, Elias Rain faced the largest live broadcast audience in interstellar history. No throne, no insignia, no ceremonial cloak. Just a former warden with a voice and a truth too heavy to bury. My name is Elias Rain. I was sworn to protect the relics of the old world. For a time, I failed. His voice carried in quiet ripples, transmitted across 100 worlds. But now I offer you this, not as vengeance, not as rebellion, but as remembrance. A wave of images began to flow behind him, projected across the skies of every colony. Children in genetic containment chambers. Civilian populations relocated under the guise of testing zones. Ledger after ledger signed by the founding members of the triumvirate houses. Voices arguing in sealed chambers. We must build loyalty, even if we must forge it in blood. This is what your peace was built on, Elias said. This is the foundation you never knew you stood on. He let the silence settle before continuing. I don't speak to tear your world apart. I speak so you can choose what world to build next. You deserve to know what was done in your name. Across the colonies, the reactions were immediate. In the mining hubs of Kelros Prime, labor unions rose up, demanding independent leadership. On Nerva 4, intellect citizens shut down artificial memory farms in protest of ethical corruption. Even within Dominion-controlled fleets, officers turned on their admirals, forcing resignations under public scrutiny. The triumvirate leaders, those who had hidden behind the heirs, were dragged from shadow councils. Their digital records seized, their assets froze by the new civilian boards. In just 3 days, centuries of fabricated legitimacy unraveled. At the center of it all, Soraya stood atop the archive platform, flanked not by soldiers, but by people. Students, mothers, workers, refugees, voices once unheard, now rising in chorus. The final tribunal was held not in a courtroom, but in an open dome, half ruined, half rebuilt, symbolizing what had fallen and what must rise. Soraya spoke briefly. We are not the sum of the blood we inherited. We are the shape of the choices we make now. Each house heir followed. Thelena offered to disband her house's private military force, instead joining a defense pact under civilian oversight. Alira promised open access to all scientific archives, with independent ethics councils. Dian, perhaps the most changed, proposed the redistribution of wealth to fund infrastructure in colonized outer sectors. No applause followed, just quiet agreement, and then the vote, not cast by bloodlines, but by voices. 3 nights later, Elias and Soraya sat side by side beneath the stars of Sairunu. No longer hunted, no longer hiding. He handed her a datapad. Archive has gone silent. All files are public now. No secrets left. She smiled softly. Strange, isn't it? How much power silence held. Until we broke it. He looked over at her. You could lead this new council. You've earned it. I don't want a seat, she said. I want to guard the table. Make sure no one like me is ever built again. Elias nodded. Then I guess we're both wardens now. Just of people instead of relics. They sat in silence for a moment, breathing in the wind, the weight of the galaxy finally lifting. Then Soraya took his hand. No ceremony, no prophecy, just one choice, made freely. The next day, on the highest ridge above the archive, they placed a new inscription. Here began the age of voice. Not blood, the pact is broken, the people remain. Far beyond Sairunu, on planets still wounded by shadows, the words echoed, not as law, but as hope. And for the first time in generations, the galaxy listened. Chapter 9. The Roots Beneath the Ashes 1 year later. Sairun bloomed. The dust storms still came now and then, old instincts of a wounded world. But life had begun to return. Where once lay the skeletons of empires, now rose foundations of a people not born to rule, but to live. Atop the steps of the rebuilt archive, a tree had been planted, an Earth species, oak, native to the long-dead forests of Terra, but modified to survive Sarun's pale soil. Its roots curled deep into the cracks of the ruins, drinking from memory. Children ran past its shadow, chasing light-winged drones. Old artisans painted across the walls of the half-collapsed domes, turning war-torn stone into murals of rebirth. And in the heart of it all, Soraya stood, no longer heir, no longer artifact, just herself. She watched a young councilwoman speak before a crowd of settlers. No scripts, no rehearsals, just ideas, raw and real. I never thought I'd see this, Elias said from behind her. Soraya turned, smiling. I wasn't sure we'd survive long enough. He stepped beside her, a satchel slung over his shoulder, jacket dusted with archive stone. Still a warden, but now of knowledge, not containment. I just finished reformatting the last core vault, he said. Everything's digitized, open source, even the ugly stuff. Especially the ugly stuff, she said. That's where the healing starts. He studied her for a moment quietly. You could have ruled them, you know, he said. Worn a crown, made them follow. She shook her head. I've worn enough chains already. And now? Now I just want to build. She looked out over the city. Yes, city now, not ruin. Trade caravans winding in, airships docking overhead, laughter echoing from where silence once reigned. Later at dusk, the archive hosted its first intercultural symposium, a gathering of thinkers, laborers, farmers, and former soldiers. They shared meals. They told stories. They asked hard questions. And no one demanded silence. Elias sat on the outer terrace watching the stars emerge. A soft thrum pulsed beneath his chair. The archive, always awake, always listening, but no longer locked behind orders and titles. Soraya joined him carrying 2 cups of brewed calf. He raised an eyebrow. Is this the bitter one? She grinned. Absolutely. We're still in Sairun. They drank, shoulders brushing. The air smelled of dust, oil, and jasmine. Someone had replanted the outer gardens with flowering vines. You miss the war? She asked. He shook his head. No, but I miss knowing what to fight against. Peace is quieter, harder. She nodded. Because now we fight to hold on, not tear down. He looked at her then, not as a mission or symbol, but as the person who had changed everything. You changed me, he said. You gave me the space to choose, she answered. He reached into his coat, pulling out a small, tarnished insignia. The warden crest, cracked, blackened, but intact. I kept it, he said, not because I still serve, but because it reminds me that I broke the rules for something worth breaking them for. She took it gently, pressed it to her lips, then handed it back. That night, beneath the stars, they walked together past the oak tree, past murals of the uprising, past quiet workshops where young engineers repurposed broken weapons into water purifiers. They said nothing. They didn't need to, because this was home now, not because it was safe, but because it was true. In the distance, the new planetary anthem played, a blend of ancient Cyrenian chords and harmonics from each of the triumvirate cultures, stitched not into dominance but into harmony. And above it all, etched into the outer walls of the archive, glowed a message in soft starlight, not chosen by blood, not bound by fear, but remembered and made free. Epilogue, a voice of my own from the Journal of Soraya Valaris. I used to wonder if the stars were watching. When I was a child, before I knew what I was, before I knew why I would sneak out of the Dominion Towers and lie on the rooftop garden, staring at constellations charted long before I was born. I imagined they were eyes, witnesses, quiet keepers of secrets too vast for any mind to hold. Now I know they watched everything. And they waited for someone to speak, waited for someone to stop asking what was expected and start asking what was right. I never wanted to be a rebel. I never wanted to be the heir. I just wanted to be real. Not a symbol, not a solution, just Soraya. And it turns out that was enough. The day I activated the archive, I thought it would destroy me. That once the truth came out about my blood, my design, my purpose, I'd vanish under the weight of it. But instead I stood, and others stood with me. Thelena, Alira, Dawn, even the people I feared would reject me. They didn't need me to be perfect. They just needed me to be honest. And Elias never asked me to be anything I wasn't. Not a savior, not a queen, just me. That was the first gift anyone ever gave me that didn't come with a leash. Now, when I stand on the archive terrace and watch the new Cyrene grow, homes rising from ruin, children learning history uncensored, councils debating policy without scripted votes, I know the stars are still watching. But I no longer fear what they see, because they see us, all of us, flawed, free, alive. They see a world not ruled by ancient names or encoded genes, but by the voices of those brave enough to speak. I am no longer the key, no longer the crown. I am Soraya Valaris, and this time the story is mine to tell. You've just experienced the Artifact Warden's Pact, a symphony of memory, rebellion, and renewal. When truth breaks free from the vault, when love defies its programming, and when a name is no longer defined by lineage, a new era begins. What happens when the one designed to obey becomes the first to break the cycle? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story moved you, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to Beyond the Stars, where every planet, every memory, every uprising has a story worth telling.